All right, so thank you all for being here today. I'm gonna try to learn how to grow some melons up here. I know it can be rather difficult, and that's what prompted this. We were talking about it in our the insect and disease class or meeting one day, so jump right in. We'll start by talking about choosing the proper varieties, how to plant them, the care that you want to give them after they're planted, and then how to know when to harvest them. So here's a bunch of general varieties. So basically, we're talking about watermelons, cantaloupe, and honeydew. Um, Watermelons, the ones I've personally tried are the first three, the Sugar Baby, Mini Love, and Blacktail Mountain. The Sugar Baby and Mini Love, just like they sound, they're smaller varieties, so they consider it a personal size. Um, the others are, I think, tend to be a little bit bigger, but they're still good for growing in this environment. The cantaloupe, I've only tried the D'Artagnan and the Minnesota Midget, but I had good luck with both of those. I've heard the last four are pretty good for trying up here in the Pacific Northwest. And then honeydew, there does not seem to be a whole lot of option, but there's a few for you. If you go to a local seed growing place, for instance, like I always go through Territorial, they're based in the Pacific Northwest. They're down in Oregon. Probably most of you know that. So anything that they have will tend to be for our climate. And the things you want to take into consideration are the climate. So obviously, we got a short growing season. The space that you want to take up. So if you have a nice, big, sprawling garden, that's not going to be a problem. If you have a small one, some of these are still easy to grow. I think it's the Mini Love, stays pretty compact plant. It still sprawls because it's a watermelon, but much easier to control. And then consider your needs. So is it a family of 8? You know, you might still want to try a couple of the bigger watermelons. If it's just you, you plus one, you might want more of the personal size so you're not overwhelmed with watermelon or cantaloupe. I don't personally consider that a problem, but you know, some can't eat that much. Here's some sources for you for the different seeds. So, like I was saying, Territorial is a good one. Some of the sites for specifically for growing up northern climates and shorter season, you have Baker Creek, which is rareseeds.com, the Sandhill Preservation Center with the same .com address, Seed Savers Exchange, which
Hold
is
in there.
seedsavers.org,
Stay
and
there.
seedtreasures.com.
All right, well, those are the ones I'm gonna put on.
And I can come back and share these afterwards if you don't. I'll get it written down. So there, you can start from seed or transplant. I preferably start from seed whenever possible, just because it gives you more varieties to choose from, saves money. You can get it started specifically when you need to. I'm in Castle Rock and I'm up about at 1,000 feet. So my planting season tends to start about 2 weeks after everybody else. From the master gardeners that I've talked to, there's quite a few that kind of fall in that same category. The seeds you want to start about 4 to 5 weeks beforehand, before you plant them out. So they take about 5 to 7 days to germinate typically, and then you want to let them grow to a decent size before planting them out. If you do want to go from transplants, they're ready to go. You don't need to take the space to care for your seedlings and worry about grow lights and all that. So that's always a good option also. So how to plant them, you're definitely going to want to choose the warmest, sunniest spot that you can. They originate, I believe, in Africa, so they like it warm. If you have a greenhouse or high tunnel, that would definitely help in our climate. I have successfully grown them outside though, so it's wait until the soil gets warm, nice and warm, and you're not going to have any more frost or really cool nights. You want to prep your planting area pretty well. The melons do like a lot of fertilizer, really well drained soil. pH of 6 to 6.5 is best. And it does help if you can put down weed barrier if you're going to be growing a lot of them, just because they don't like the competition from weeds and it's hard to get in there and weed stuff out once they start to vine. We all know that they sprawl pretty good and you don't want to be stepping all over them. When you do go to plant them out, you want to try not to disturb the roots. Most cucurbits, so like cucumbers, all the melons, pumpkins, squash, they prefer not to have their roots disturbed too much. So if you're starting from seed, it's a great idea to just put 1 or 2 seeds in each cell. And then as soon as they sprout,
It doesn't work
pick
out.
out one of them, if they both sprout, and then just plant the one.
My first time.
You do want to get them out fairly young. Like I said, you want to give them a little bit of robustness, but if they get root bound in their pots, it will set them back when you plant them out. So when they're about 2 to 3 inches tall, have 2 to 3 true leaves on them is about when you want to get them out. You want them to have a nice root ball, but not root bound by any means. Most people plant them in hills, so about every 3 to 4 feet, depending on the variety. Some of them that are really big, you want to go a little bit bigger with the spacing. So a hill, they'll literally hill it up a little bit, and then plant. A lot of people plant 2 plants per hill. I'm more of the mindset of just doing 1, especially in our environment. Just want to give them the best opportunity possible so they don't have to compete for nutrients, or gives them more space to air out and not get the diseases and such. If you do have a small garden, or if you would like to try it in a greenhouse or high tunnel, those smaller varieties are really good for trellising. A lot of people do that. So pretty much anything you would use for your tomatoes, cucumbers, anything like that, you can train the vines to go up, and the melons will stay on the vines really well until they're really ripe. Watermelons aren't usually too much of a hard thing for that. The cantaloupes can slip when they're really ripe, so that's actually a really good way to get more out of your garden space. So after planting your melons, the care that you want to give them is to continue feeding them with a water-soluble fertilizer. So when we first plant them, we're going to till in a bunch of compost, maybe put down some organic granular fertilizer, like a slow release, and then a water-soluble that's going to get to them really fast is also a good idea. Never hurts to just give them a little bit more. They are very heavy feeders. After the plant starts to vine out, it's best to give it like a mulch of some type. So straw is often used. You could use wood chips or whatever's good for your personal garden area. It's going to help to retain moisture, kind of keep it out of the worst heat of the day, although they do like warmth, so that's not usually too much of a problem up here. It'll also help raise the melons off of the ground. So some of them can tend to rot if they sit right on the ground. Those little pill bugs can get to them, mice or voles. So that really helps to control that stuff. So beyond the typical nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium that we want to make sure every plant gets, melons really thrive with some extra sulfur, zinc, and boron. So sulfur helps to make proteins, vitamins, and flavor compounds. This all leads to more productive plants, more disease resistant, stress tolerant. The zinc is important for enzyme activity. So it creates auxins, which is basically like a hormone that helps produce new growth. So especially if you notice that your new growth isn't looking all that lush and green and beautiful, the zinc can really help with that. It is in most fertilizers, so definitely check that before you put more. Usually what is in them is sufficient. Boron is really important with the watermelons, so it helps actually elongate the pollen tubes, which helps with the pollination and the fruit set. And it also helps with sugar movement, so it can lead to sweeter watermelons, which of course we're all after. And sorry, I keep referencing watermelons because I think that's also always my favorite. So it applies to all of them. All of this applies to all of them. Very little boron is needed, and most soils have it in sufficient quantity, and it can become toxic to plants pretty easily if you put too much boron. So you definitely don't want to go out and buy boron and just put it on by like the heaping handful. If you ever do have a problem with fruit set, though, that may be something to keep in mind and watch out for. So definitely one of the, probably most important parts after you do get your fruit set and everything is knowing when to pick them. And watermelons, a lot of people say pick them up and feel them, which is a good indicator. Even at the store, you pick one up and it feels heavier than you think it should, heavier than it looks. That's usually a good indication that it's fully mature, that it's got lots of water and sugar in there. There is the field spot, they call it, on the bottom part where the watermelon usually rests against the soil. So that will usually be white until it's ready to pick, and then it tends to turn yellower. So that's a good indication. And then what I've always had the best luck with is the first little curly Q. So if you can see that in the picture, or next time you're really looking at your melon, if you look where the melon is on the plant and trace it up back towards the main center of the vine, you'll see these little curly tendrils coming off of it. When that first one or two dry out, that's a really good indication that your melon's ready to go. Cantaloupe is a little bit different. I've never followed the curly Q one on that, but the hands down the best way to know is you're going to smell it. It's going to smell like a delicious cantaloupe. You'll walk by and you won't be able to resist picking it. Another cue is just by looking at it, the rind usually turns from a greenish color to a tan. So on most cantaloupes, we know you always have that kind of netting, webbing on the outside. That's kind of always tan, but if you look further down on the skin of it, it's a little bit greenish. So you're going to want to wait for that to turn. They should also be a little bit heavier than you would expect when you pick them up. And a lot of varieties are called what they call a slip. So, like I was saying before, when they're really ready to go, you'll kind of pick them up and feel them, and they'll just slip right off the vine. You don't have to fight it. You don't have to. It's not like a pumpkin where you have to cut it off or anything. Most of them will just come up right off in your hand. Honeydew is pretty similar to cantaloupe in that it'll have a ripe smell to it.
No, we have a green as well.
It'll kind of change from a green to more of a yellow color. The rind will become smooth on most of them.
This morning.
And those ones, you don't want them to be solid as a rock. You actually want them to have a little bit of give to them, especially right where that blossom is. So the opposite end of where it's attached to the vine. If you push it just a little bit, it'll have a little bit of give. Of course, you don't want it to be all mushy and your finger to go right through. So, when you think it's nearing that point, you can just push it gently every day or two and check to see where it's at with that. So storing melons is not the easiest, obviously. I think we all know that just from buying them from the store. They can, if you pick them at their perfect ripeness, they can store for a few weeks in like 40 degrees and out of direct sunlight. So in your fridge or like a cool basement or something would probably work well. And that does work more for watermelon than for cantaloupe or any of the others. It can be dehydrated or freeze dried. So it does take a while. You got to be really patient with that, but it gets kind of leathery and it's a good little snack. I don't think they keep the longest still, but it's a good way to get a little bit extra out of them. A lot of people don't know you can also pickle the rinds. So I don't have a recipe for it. I have tried it once, but I forgot to. So after you get all the red meat out of a watermelon, you can peel the green part off and then pickle just that in between rind part. And I forgot to peel the green part off, so it was rather chewy. So don't do that. But there's recipes on YouTube and Pinterest and, just Google it, and just another kind of cool way to use it. And then, of course, if you got chickens, throw it to them. Another great way to make it last is to make a fruit leather out of it. Really simple. Grind it down, usually put a little bit of sugar and whatnot in it, and then put it on like a dehydrator tray or in your oven for a while. That's mostly it. So I would highly recommend getting out there and growing it. It's like most things. If you have ever had it from the store and not a huge fan, this will change your mind.